Welcome to Juval Hub, your helping hand in property management education. We are so thankful that you have joined us, and please remember to follow and like us on your favorite social media outlet, which you can find in our show notes. Now let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Juval Hub podcast, your helping hand in property management education. I'm your host, Jonathan Saar, and with me again is my dear friend, Mike Brewer from Radco Residential. Mike, how is life? How are you doing? Good to have you back.
Well, thank you first and foremost for having me back, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you and invest in some content. It's always inspirational to me. So thank you for having me back.
You know, I think of the evolution of where you and I have been, like when we first met, and it was through content. It was Twitter or something along those lines back in 2009 or 8 or something like that. And where we're at today, you know, and it relates so much to the topic that you wanted to share with our audience today about putting the human back in property management. So I just want to set the stage for our audience. It's like you and I, we've been through, and there's a big group of us too, right? Like we've gone through so much technology changes. And this is such an important subject because at the end of the day, property management it's people. It's a people business. So thank you for being on the show. I know our audience is going to really resonate with your personal experience and some key takeaways, good reminders for all of us to put into practice. But let's get some background to it. So why that expression, putting the human back in property management, why is that important to you? What has spurred that thought on? Give us a little overview of where your mind is at with that topic today.
Yeah, so this is fun for me to answer. So I have to go to the titans of technology, right? You think about the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs of the world and others. But so Bill Gates way back in the day had a mission, and that mission was to put a PC on every desk all around the world. And it was not the hardware, right? It was because he wanted his operating system on all of those PCs all around the world, right? And in short, my mission is to take all of those PCs off the desks of our team members at our properties, because it, in my head, has taken away the human element of the way business was meant to happen. In my head, business was an opportunity and is an opportunity for you and I to sit in a physical space together, not distracted by technology, to look one another in the eye, to have our handshake mean something because we are in the moment receiving it and giving it, right? And that element in my head has escaped us, and it has created a lot more conflict than we are used to or accustomed to in getting business done, whether it be negotiation or conflict resolution or whatever it is we're trying to achieve, because the human element is out and because we hide behind technology. We're just not personable and in it like we used to be.
Yeah. I agree. I think I've personally kind of gone through a couple of phases where I felt like technology was almost burning me out because there was just so much of it. And man, you remember the days when this device, this phone that we had was, was attached to a wall with a long cord, depending on where you were at home or at the office. That was it. And boy, what a fast forward of change within just a couple of decades. Like,
that's right.
Very, very difficult to absorb. I remember teaching a class on this years ago where we went through the timeline, what you were mentioning. Okay, let's go back to when the phone was invented, in the market saturation or the adoption rather of that device, then you go to like a fax machine and then the PC, as you mentioned, and that covered many, many decades of time.
That's right.
And so here we are today within the last 20, 30 years, and it's just exploded. And I agree. It seems like it's and I really feel like we truly felt that during the COVID time period, where we were definitely isolated from people. Technology, I think that was its own experiment that was proved true right then and there. It did not help. It did not solve, even though fundamentally from a secular perspective, it solved certain issues at the time that we needed to comply with. But from a human perspective, it certainly did not. So, okay, we've got the foundation. I love your comment. I guess my question is how would you go about doing that? Having every computer removed from a team member's desk, like is that a pipe dream, or what? Is there a path to it? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I do not have a fully baked vision for this, but I'll give you my sort of early inning take on it. And it's all couched in an acronym, and the acronym is ACEO. And the A stands for automation, the C stands for centralization, the O stands for outsourcing, or ACE, elimination, and then outsourcing, right?
Got it.
And so I think through those four lenses, I think if we were to take a look at the things that need to happen on a property on a daily basis, you can automate a large portion of the rote and routine work. And a lot of companies are already doing this, right? And the advent of ChatGPT, very early innings, but iterations of that down the road are going to only accelerate the pace of our ability to do automation.
Right.
Centralization. Companies like Equity Residential and others have been doing this for 15 or 20 years now. It started with the elimination of the assistant manager's role, and not elimination, but sort of centralizing that effort and allowing one person to do the work of many. In elimination, I think that automation and centralization are going to present these opportunities to actually eliminate things that it's not high value work, and it's not yielding a real result or a real return. So we're going to actually eliminate a lot of like sacred cow type processes and procedures and organizations. Okay. And then outsourcing, not a new concept, right? A lot of people offshore work. I think accounting is probably a good example of that. A lot of accounting gets done in India and the Philippines now, and organizations have been doing that for many years. But I think and then the other thing that I would add, which is not part of this acronym, is that consumers are very used to DIY, right? Do it yourself kind of stuff. In fact, a lot of people would rather do it themselves. So I think through doing it themselves, the consumer doing it themselves, or this automation, centralization, elimination, and outsourcing will allow us the opportunity to remove almost every device off of a property, outside of maybe something that hangs on the wall where we still, we use this for presentation purposes, but it's not there to like capture our attention ongoing. It's just there to help us along a sales path or along a work order, whatever you want to put up there. But it's not there it's for data entry. It's just, you can remove all that data entry stuff and put that somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's possible. In my head, it's 100% possible.
Yeah. And, we always look as an industry to other industries. So what's the bar? Like, what are other groups doing? How are they? Because unfortunately, property management, we're always seem to be a little bit behind. We look at the hospitality industry as an example, hotel. I feel like I learn a lot of lessons every time I walk into a hotel on what is that experience like. The car buying experience, we know that's completely different now. That's changed. So I agree with you, Mike. There are a lot of things that can be that can be centralized, but what are we doing to make sure that we're there for people when they want their questions answered? They want it answered by a human, and I feel like the overall experience has become, or needs to become, back to basics, where it's just like, hello, welcome. It's nice to have you with us today, and we're looking forward to giving you an amazing experience. If this is your first time at ABC Property, what brought you to us today? And then you start going through those questions to try and get to know the individual. I remember this TV show, medical show, and the person was so glued to filling out the documentation, like, what are you eating? What do you just like going through all of this stuff, and never once looked at the person. And the person, I mean, it's a TV show, but I know it resonated because I'm like, okay, well, yeah, that was kind of a terrible experience when the focus is so much, and I have to fill in all of this data on this document in this PC before I even look you in the eye and, smile and say hi and where are you from, and, getting into the human aspect of it. So is that measuring up with what your vision is?
You're spot on. It's a perfect example. And think about that. That experience that you just described there in a medical, on a TV show, but you've probably had this experience where you go online, you put all your information in prior to showing up at the doctor's office, and when you get to the doctor's office, they give you a pile of paper to fill
do it again. Yeah.
to do it again. And it's because we're so distracted with what I term as busy work. Now, it's important work, but it's busy work, and it can be done somewhere else offsite with different mechanisms. You get back to everything we learned in kindergarten, right? Learning how to look each other in the eye and actually communicate and listen, not just hear. Those are two very different things, right? When you listen, that is a very different thing than hearing. I hear you, but did I listen and actually take in what you're trying to communicate so that I can respond accordingly? Like, we lose that in the noise today. And so I think, yes, you're spot on. We need to remove, I think we have to get back to civil discord, to actually being a beneficial presence to one another. Because I think at the end of the day, what we're all here to do is to actually assist one another in becoming better versions of ourselves, right? And for a bigger, broader mission, right? It's not about the office that we show up to every day. That's just the place where we get to act out the being a human,
right?
And where we invite others in to be human with us.
Yeah. Love this conversation. Put the human back in property management. Let's just take a quick break for a commercial, and we'll come back to this and see, well, where are we going here in the future?
What does a team manager actually do? Team management is the foundation of a happy and effective workforce. Effective training can build a solid foundation. JuvoHub is happy to announce its new online course, Introduction to Team Management. Learn more about this course at juvohub.com, your helping hand in property management education.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the show. So Mike Brewer from Radco Residential, we have covered putting the human back in property management, the history, I guess, so to speak, the concept, looking at other industries as a potential benchmark from hotel, medical. So now, like, from our audience perspective, they may be like, okay, that's a big, tall order. Where do we start? Like, how do we get there? Is it part of just when you think of it from a change management perspective, does that intentionally have to be part of the flavor of that conversation in whatever the outcome or decision is. What's your thoughts?
You know, I think about this. If I understand your question correctly, I think everything always starts at the top of an organization, right? If the leaders are not a united front in terms of playing out a change like this, then nothing will really get done. One of the things we do at Radco, or we're in the early innings of installing at Radco, is having everyone look at their job through this lens of automation, centralization, elimination, outsourcing, right?
Yep.
So let's back up and make that a broader concept for a second. So in my head, where do I start? Well, I start by taking a complete inventory of everything that we do in our organization, right? Everything. And we document that. Now, we might document that under a framework of the resident and prospect journey, or the team member journey, or the vendor partner journey in terms of doing business with us, or the investor journey. And so however you break that up, you start by taking a full inventory. Mm-hmm. and literally write that out, right? Put it up on a wall and think about it like a timeline or a journey. And then using ACEO, you think about those areas of opportunity along that timeline that you can then, right, automate or centralize or eliminate or outsource. So you take every one of those journeys where you've taken full inventory and you figure out where you can. Some of it's going to be low hanging fruit. Some of it's going to be very difficult. So low hanging fruit, you can attack quickly and swiftly. If you used becoming a paperless property management company, and we've been talking about paperless companies for a very long bit of time, but there are still companies out there that use paper to do things. If you see that as the first thing that you need to tackle, then go do that, because that anymore seems like low hanging fruit, right? But something more complex, like centralizing your entire maintenance operation or centralizing your entire leasing operation, that's a little more complex, and you have to bolt a lot of things together to make that happen. So I think it starts with taking a full inventory of every process, procedure, discipline, and routine in your organization, and then applying the ACEO method to it to start to get your human back in the equation.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. You hit the nail right on the head. Because I think from our audience perspective, that's just like, okay, where's the beginning? But I totally resonated with that visual. It's almost like, okay, does this pass the human litmus test, so to speak? Like, okay, right. Are we hitting our humanity objectives with this initiative? And if it doesn't, then we gotta just step back here and reanalyze the necessity, the priority, all of those ideas with that. So that's fantastic. So walking away from this episode for our audience, putting the human back in property management, using, what's your acronym again? Let's say it again one more time so everyone gets it.
Yeah, it's ACEO.
ACEO. So that's going to be the title, putting the human back in property management by implementing ACEO. Love it. So it's something for our audience. You need to look back at your company culture. To me, what is that bigger picture? What are you trying to do? Where has the human touch been lost? What are your resident reviews like? What are their keywords that they're using as far as their experience with you? And listen to that. And even internally, I remember Mike, again, Janet, she was on a previous episode, and she mentioned the importance of the products like what Swift Bunny does, and being able to get the voice of your employees to find out what is going on. All of those items, if they are the priority, then you're going to be making technology decisions that's going to support that bigger picture, which is the humanity behind it. That was my takeaway. What's your summary of today's discussion for our audience?
Yeah, just as a quick side note before I give you my takeaway, when you're speaking through that, it brought to mind in a prior organization, many times you don't have the customer's voice in the room, or you don't have the employee voice in the room, right? Unless you have these mechanisms like you just mentioned, Swift Bunny and other data collection mechanisms that consumers can use to give feedback. But in a prior organization, I purchased big cardboard cutouts of celebrities, right? And when we would sit in our boardroom, we had The Rock as an example. The Rock had a seat, and I think The Rock was our customer, or The Rock was our team member. I can't remember, but there was a mechanism out there where we collected data, and then The Rock was that person in the room, like a visual representation of our customer.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, and then we would, who tried to talk like The Rock. But anyway, it's important to have those voices in the room when you're thinking about things you're going to do in your organization. My biggest takeaway from our conversation is, I think many times today, especially with all of the prop tech solutions that are chasing problems that I don't know if they're necessarily our problems, or they're problems that are being invented to put technology against, and they're not always the most useful. Now, that's not an indictment of the prop tech industry, but I think at some point you get fatigued by all the solutions out there. And the fatigue plays out in the way of many times, or more times than not, you're working in your business. You're just so busy working in your business that you forget to work on the business, right? You're in there day to day, you're solving problems, you're putting out fires, and you never really get ahead because that's all you're doing. Sometimes you have to be intentional about stepping back, creating a mechanism that allows you to have time and space and intention about working on the business. That thing I described about taking inventory of the entire business, that takes time, right?
Yeah.
But many times that time gets robbed because we're just in it all the time. So you have to make that kind of non-negotiable intentional time to step away and actually work on the business.
Excellent takeaway. We appreciate your perspective. We know you've been in this industry a long time, so our audience definitely respects all the work that you've done over the years for the business, and we know we want to make our industry better. That's the purpose of this show. We want to bring these voices to the property management audience that we have out there and keep doing all that we can, because it just touches on so many other things. Like we could dive off into all kinds of other topics, and where this touches just this very simple conversation about bringing the human back in property management. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being on the show again, my friend. Great to have a high level overview on what humanity, what it does, and what we need to do each and every day. All of us do our part. How can people stay in touch with you?
Well, you can find me on any of the social channels, but I'm not going to use this time necessarily to endorse myself. I would like to rob it just to acknowledge you as an individual. I think that you have been in service of this industry in many ways, in many shapes, and many forms over the last 25 years, and you participate in all of the IREMs and the NAAs of the world, and you just give and give and give. And I just admire you and very inspired by what you do in terms of being in service to the industry and having done it for such a long bit of time. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man. You get me choked up on here. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a great industry. We got so many new generations coming in, so we got a big message to keep pushing out there on ways that we can make our industry continue to grow, continue to be better every day. Thanks for being on the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Until next time, class dismissed.